Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound, brought to you by saas.group. I'm your host, Anna Dana, and this is the show where we chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success. And here with me today is Esben Friis-Jensen, co-founder and chief growth officer at Userflow, a no-code tool for building customized in-app tours, checklists, and surveys. Userflow was able to bootstrap to over 500 customers and millions in ARR with just a team of three. And well, who doesn't want to know how you did it? So, super excited to have you here.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me here on the show.
Sure. Okay. Well, and first of all, this is your not your first rodeo, right? You've had businesses before, but this one went in a totally different direction with a totally different, team and just the whole setting. So, how did you get here? Can we dig into your background a bit?
Yeah, sure. So originally from Denmark, Copenhagen, and I used to work as a consultant in a big consultancy company, Accenture. But then back in 2013, me and three friends from Denmark decided to start a company. So we moved to the US to join an accelerator, and then we just ended up staying there. That company was called Cobalt, and it's a cybersecurity software as a service company that today is Series B, closing in on a Series C, 200 plus employees, still doing great.
Oh.
And I was there for 8 years, and then I decided I wanted to get back to the startup kind of world, startup roots, and so I joined my friend Sebastian in starting a new company called Userflow, and this time we were not going to raise capital. We were going to do it a bit differently, and it's been a lot of fun.
Okay, that's quite a ride. So, how do you go from raising and, as far as I remember, Cobalt raised 37 million the last time
Yeah.
you raised,
Yeah,
right?
oh,
So,
that's the
how do you go?
total. Yeah, yeah, I think there is 37 in total. Yeah,
Okay,
no, I think when we started Cobalt, we saw that as the only avenue, right? We didn't know about bootstrapping, and we were first time founders, so it was all new, and the fundraising route was kind of that was the only way to do a tech startup back then. Nobody was
right.
talking
A
about
textbook
bootstrapping.
example.
Exactly. So we did the accelerator, we pitched, we raised an angel round and then a seed round and then a round and a B round, right? So we went on that traditional VC journey. I would say one thing we didn't do, which we've seen a lot of companies do at least 2 years ago, but we also saw back then, we didn't go out and raise like a huge round of money in one go. Before
Okay.
we had product market fit. It was more like gradual kind of fundraisers, and in that way, we actually avoided racing on the wrong product market fit model. We actually ended up pivoting from one model to another, and I think it would have been a lot harder to do that if we had raised like a huge round of money on a big valuation on the old model.
Right. Oh, I hear a lot of founders say that, like, thank God we didn't go and raise money 2 years ago. And like everyone's
Yeah.
kind of just uh remembering how easy it was, but then the just the backlash that it's getting right now, it's super crazy. But okay, so Userflow went in a totally different direction. What was the biggest oh my god moment when you started bootstrapping?
I mean, for us, it's been a kind of step by step journey. I think our biggest advantage, both Sebastian and I, are second time founders. So we knew a lot of stuff, so we went into it believing in ourselves that we could do it and bootstrap the business. But of course, it was surprising that we could grow at the same rate as a VC-backed company.
Right.
And yeah, so I think that was probably the biggest surprise, that we were able to do that without having to go out and hire a lot of people. As you
Oh,
said, we're just a team of three. We're still
Yeah.
growing, and we're not planning to hire anybody anytime soon. So yeah,
Okay. So
it's
it
been
does get
insane.
easier, right? The second time, because I was talking to another Dane, and he was saying that, it's kind of difficult to just put a cap on this first experience and be cool with the fact that maybe the second business will not be as successful, but in your case it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely, it's 10x easier the second time. You know more or less how to build, in my case, the go-to-market model. In Sebastian's case, how to build the baseline SaaS foundation, like coding it and so on, right? So you have a lot of like learnings that you don't have to redo. And the first time we learned all that, right, and had to grind, and we didn't take the easy route. It was like we worked a lot on things that are we could have automated earlier and so on. So I went
Right.
into Userflow being able to automate a lot of stuff from early on.
Okay. Oh, well, that makes sense, of course. Okay.
Yeah,
So, how did you come up with it in the first place? I mean, you were in a security startup
yeah.
space, and then you went to a totally different direction.
Yeah, no. So I can tell my story of how I get into it, but also just to tell the origin story was that actually my co-founder Sebastian, he was building another product, which was a video kind of recording tool, and he wasn't gaining a lot of traction with that. But then he, as part of that, had built an onboarding journey, and everybody was asking him, "How did you build that? Can we build the same?" And so they were asking him about the onboarding journey instead of his actual product. And then he went out and looked at the market and kind of saw, okay, there's definitely a gap in the market. There's a lot of players in the market, but there was a gap in like making it easy and nice. So that's where he got like the idea to do Userflow. And my journey into it was that at Cobalt we had worked on a project to become more product led. When we started Cobalt back in 2013, we were a very product led business, but then over the years we became more and more sales led, and became a very sales led business. And then when we started that project to go back to the product led, that was something that intrigued me, and I really love the whole product led model. And then when I got the opportunity to join Sebastian and one build a company that's doing product led growth, but also build a company that's serving other companies who want to be more product led, was something I found very, very interesting, and that's why I decided to do it.
That's interesting. Okay, so on one hand, there is Sebastian who didn't take it, personally, didn't say, "Oh my God," but I'm building a different thing. Like, love it.
Yeah, yeah,
And then there is you that okay, that added your own layer to it. Cool. So with product-led growth and with product-led companies, I hear very polar opinions about how to go to market with it. So on one hand, you've got startups that want to go full on build in public, and would just tell everything about like all the bugs, all the features, how you're doing it.
yeah.
And on the other hand, there are people that are building in private, right? And they say, if you're a product led, then you have no right to put a product on the market that is not good enough for people to use, right? Or that is
Mhm.
not good enough to solve the problem. So,
Yeah.
where do you stay between those two?
Yeah, I think we're somewhere in the middle. We're not like build in public. We don't do that, but we definitely iterate fast. I think that was one of the learnings out of Cobalt, was that when you're a sales-led business trying to become product-led, one of the biggest challenges is actually this fast iteration, like being able to release something quickly, learn from that, reiterate, and move on, right? And with Userflow, we are definitely iterating faster. So we are releasing stuff that is not perfect, but it's good enough, right? And Sebastian is an amazing engineer. So what he builds as a baseline, good enough is great. What others would call great, but we do take a pride in delivering a good product, but it's not. we're very focused on not doing something that takes forever. I would say any feature we build is basically like it doesn't take more than 2 months max to release. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and there are just three of you, right? So the I think communication in such a small team, it just happens. So you just do what you do, right? And
Yeah.
it also takes a lot less time.
Yeah, I think a great example is our latest feature. We just launched an AI assistant, so everybody's doing,
Yep.
GPT-4
Saw
stuff,
it.
and we completely cleaned our roadmap to do that. So back in February, we kind of looked at this GPT-4 API coming, and then we were like, okay, we need to do something in this space. And the most obvious thing for us was to build like an AI assistant, so basically like an AI support widget. And for that, we built a baseline, or Sebastian coded it right, that he then released, what is it now, 3 weeks ago or something. And now we're still iterating, right? But it took us, 2 months to get it out, the baseline feature, and now we're still iterating on it. But it was not like I think for many other businesses, it would have been a 6-month project, right? But that's too late in this kind of world where you need to move fast
True.
and learn. So
Yeah, yeah. I think with the rise of ChatGPT, everyone's kind of expecting all the companies out there just magically get ChatGPT on every website, every product. So yeah,
yeah,
I absolutely agree. In this space, you have to move super fast.
yeah,
But okay, let's talk a bit about your customer acquisition, right? And again, with product-led growth, and not building in public, right?
yeah.
How did you go with that? How did you approach your first customers? Did your previous startup, your previous experience help with that? Your network, maybe?
Yeah, for sure. So our very first customers were completely through network, but that was like the first maybe 5 or 10. And from that, the second batch of customers we got from Product Hunt, like a lot of other businesses, we did a Product Hunt campaign, and then we got customers through that. So those were like the early customers, right? And typically when the customers you get at that stage are also like smaller businesses that are great for that point in time, but in the long run, they might some of them might turn out to be great
Yeah,
long time customers, but others are like very very small businesses that are great for that early phase, but they might not be the best fit for your product later on. So we got a lot of good feedback, early feedback, and a lot of those customers are still customers today. But then we realized, okay, we also need we didn't realize, we knew we had to build a more sustainable go-to-market model, right? And that's where we added primarily SEM as a beginning. So basically like adding search engine marketing via Google primarily. And then we also started looking at SEO. How can we improve our SEO, do more content? Especially with the rise of product-led growth, it was perfect that we could, as a product-led business, speak about product-led growth while also serving product-led growth businesses. So we could do a bit of like content around that. How do you build great product-led onboarding or product-led growth
yeah,
processes and so on. So that's actually one thing we've been very public about is how we go to market. I've done a whole video series about how we do product-led growth at Userflow. So we have the SEM, SEO channels, but then when the user, we have a free trial. So when the user sign up, we use Userflow and Userflow, of course. So we onboard them, get them to
yeah.
that initial aha moment, and then they see the value right away, and hopefully they then end up buying, right? So it's a very product-led growth approach from the time we acquire them, basically.
Right. So what's the aha moment that you're pushing? That is your call to action. Is it the ease of building this, or what are you looking for?
Yeah, so we're a builder tool, right? So that's the ease of building is like the number one thing. So that's
Yeah.
the very first thing we show our customers when they sign up for a free trial is how fast they can build, for instance, an onboarding flow with Userflow. So when they sign up, we have like a flow and a user flow that basically guides them how to build their very first flow, and they have one built in like 3 minutes, and then it's like, wow, I can build this. And they're building it on their own product, because we have a Chrome extension that basically allows them to do that. So technically, when you have to launch Userflow on your own product, you have to install a small piece of code. But we made a Chrome extension so you can kind of mimic the same experience,
Oh, cool.
but only on your local machine, right? So in that way, you can, as a product manager or designer or customer success manager, you can get that aha moment without having to involve any developers. So that's been
Right.
key
So
for us.
fully no code experience.
Yeah, exactly. And then when
Yeah.
they're bought
Oh, so
over,
cool.
then they can ask the developer to install the code, and it's super easy.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. More and more on this podcast, I feel like I should not only research about the products that we're talking about, but I should try them all because they all seem
yeah,
so exciting. So, okay,
yeah.
that's what
No, for
I'm doing
sure.
later.
It's speaking about that. It's actually, and I've done that. I've done a video series where I signed up for some popular SaaS tools to review their onboarding, and it's also always been a great way to learn about how you can improve stuff yourself. Like sign up for some popular SaaS products, see what their experience is, like what are they doing to onboard customers, what are their aha moments. You can really learn a lot, and most importantly, sign up for your own product on a regular basis, so you can actually
Yeah.
see what the experience is for an end user.
Right. Okay. So you're making it happen for every like non-technical person out there. And as far as I know, you also push this like self-serve kind of flow onto them, right? And what I notice coming from a tech startup is that it's usually done when it's for developers because developers don't want to like basically communicate with anybody, right? They know how everything should work, so like they can't do this. um this is not a developer tool. You are targeting
No.
very different group of people, right? So
Yeah.
why do you still want it to be as self-served as possible?
No, I think developers has long been on that journey, right? But what has happened in the SaaS industry in general, and not only in the SaaS industry, but in any industry, is that it's a new generation coming along, and we are, some people are calling it the end user era. That you basically, people expect to be able to self-serve. They are brought up with like digitally, and that has made them made this world into a world where people expect to be able to self-serve, and it's not just developers, it's everyone wanting to do that. When you go and want to try out a product, you don't really want to schedule a demo and wait for that demo to be scheduled and then do a call and so on, right? Unfortunately, I see a lot of companies who are pushing that process on their employees, right? Because they're kind of saying you need to evaluate 10 tools, and then you end up in
Yeah.
that kind of meeting process. And reality is, it's almost impossible to assess a tool based on demos. You can get an initial idea, but you really need to, at least for tools where you need to use them regularly, you need to experience them hands-on to really try them, right? So what we have done at Userflow is really fully buy into that end user era, and we are serving that audience who want to self-serve. We do have video demos on our website, and we do have a schedule, a demo form, but we really want to incentivize them doing the trial instead of doing a meeting.
Right. Okay. And coming back to the fact that you're also just a three people team, right? And you've got so many customers and a ton of money in ARR. So
Yeah,
how do you, of course, the onboarding is self-serve, but what about your customer support? Like, how are you able to support the users, the
yeah.
customers that you have? Are you jumping on calls 24/7, or how is it
No, I
structured?
think, yeah, that's also so two things when it comes to support. We do well to reduce support tickets. As One, and that's the number one thing, is if we see a recurring support issue, we always fix it in the product, right? We go in and look at the root cause, and then we fix it in the product. We spend, I used to say like 40%, maybe it's more, but around that, on solving UX challenges, solving support
Oh, wow.
challenges in the product, right? And then the rest on new features. So we really see that as a high priority to reduce support tickets by fixing it in the product, solving the root cause instead of hiring people.
Right.
Then the second thing we do is we push back a lot, like, because people have a tendency to say, "I have a
That was
problem.
my
Can we set up
question.
a call? Can we set up a call to solve my
Yeah.
problem?" Right? And we really believe in Loom there, so we push people back and say, "Can you explain it in text? If you cannot explain it in text, send us a video." The argument is really, if they send a video, one, they think a bit more about their issue, and it's not, they have to also think about, okay, am I doing everything correctly here or not? And secondly, it gives us a possibility to not respond in real time in a meeting, and have more people look at the problem if it really is a complex problem to solve, right? So it's really, I think it's benefiting everyone that you're doing it as a video instead of doing it as a meeting where people have to think on their feet to solve a problem, right?
Right.
And have to find a space in the schedule and all these different things. So we are very like pushing back, asking for videos, and I think you need to do that. You really have to always push towards video, push towards documentation, and so forth. And then the
Right.
most recent development has been our AI assistant, which has even more dramatically reduced our support tickets. It's amazing how it can respond to questions. It's basically using our knowledge base to answer questions. So it really gives great answers, as good as we would give them. So yeah, it's been great.
All right. It's a tricky question. Is customer always right?
No, of course not. I mean, customer, you should always listen to your customers. So there's a big difference to that, right? You should always listen to your customers, but customers might have suggestions or requests that are not reasonable, or might be better solved in another way. But you should always listen to what are their needs, is it they're looking for. Um, and yeah, sometimes it can get almost a bit intense if somebody really wants a call and you're kind of like pushing back on it.
Yeah.
I try not to become too annoying, but I do feel the need to just give them a push, because I know if you don't do that, you're never going to change the behavior. Then it's just going to be another call next time, another call next time, another call next time. And it's really about changing that behavior for your customers on what they should expect when they reach out to you. So it can feel a bit uncomfortable asking for those things, but in the long run, it works.
Okay. All right. So AI for solving like simpler questions, right? And
Not, I
then
wouldn't say
Loom.
simpler questions. This GPT, it's even advanced questions it can help
Oh,
solve.
cool.
So of course there are certain scenario questions it's having a harder time solving, but in general it responds really well. Yeah, we've been very surprised, and we're always dog fooding, right? We're always using our own products to learn. And in the beginning, it was okay, but now it's just amazing, and we it becomes a lot more about making your docs better, right? Like suddenly you discover gaps in your documentation because the AI can only answer based on my documentation. So if you have certain gaps there, then it becomes more about documentation optimization rather than uh, getting the AI
Right.
adjusted, basically.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, all right. So let's get back to product like growth and your customer acquisition, right? It was the network first, and then a bit of product hunt and a bit of everything. What's
Yeah.
now the biggest customer acquisition channel?
I think it's still SEM is a big one. SEM has been really great for us, but word of mouth has, of course, increased over time, right? If you build a great product, people will speak about that product and they will refer it to their friends and speak about it. And you can empower that by having things like G2 and Capterra, where people share reviews and stuff like that. So that's those two channels have been great for us. And then SEO has been growing over time. SEO is this like long, hard journey, right?
Yeah.
You put content out there and it gets better and better, but it's a much more intangible, hard to measure journey. But it definitely has given us a lot as well.
Right. And obviously, it seems like you're growing your personal brand really well because, I just put your name into Google and then I got like 10 pages of just podcasts. So,
Yeah.
okay. All
Yeah.
right.
No.
So, that,
Yeah. I think. I mean, that's the future, right? Like we. So, in my view, outbound is, if not dead, then close to dying. And with AI, it's going to be even more spammy. So we'll see. But what people started doing, then we moved to LinkedIn, right? Initially, there was email outbound, then we moved to LinkedIn outbound, and that worked for a while. For Cobalt, LinkedIn outbound did wonders, right? In that era from 2013 to whenever 2018, LinkedIn
right. In the
outbound was
sales
like an
years.
amazing channel, right? You could like, people were really like, this is a personal connection. I really want to do a demo or sign up for a product. But then it became like email. People didn't want to, it got spammy, right? So people didn't want to look at it anymore. And what people then started moving towards was the social selling, right? Like building your brand online, posting about real topics, being authentic. And that's basically also what I've been doing, just being myself, being authentic, writing about it on various channels, speaking on podcasts. So I love that because it's a much more authentic way to do marketing than just spamming people with a bunch of messages.
True, 100% agree. All right, but let's talk about retention a bit because in my head, maybe I don't know the product too much, but um, well, it's great for building an onboarding flow, but how many of those do you need? So, how long do
Yeah.
customers stay with you, and how do you make sure they do?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a subscription model. So if you're not subscribing, the flows won't run, right? So if you just build one flow and then you want it to run all the time, you need to
Yeah,
sustain the subscription, right? But of course, we want people to use it more than that and expand their use cases and expand their usage. And the way we look at it, onboarding never ends, right? So you might build that initial welcome flow or welcome checklist and onboarding guidance, but then we have features such as the resource center that is an always-on kind of mechanism for ongoing support. We have you can do feature announcements, so you can announce new features, guide people to drive those features, and so on. So it's really onboarding never ends, and we're using all those same tools to keep our customers retained, right? Like announce new features, ongoing support, make sure you are constantly introducing great new things that new shiny objects that they can look at, right? So it's definitely something we are very focused on, the retention piece. But yeah, I mean, in general, even a customer just building that initial onboarding can get like a ton of value from just having that running on Userflow, basically.
all right, okay. So, can you maybe share a hack that's working for you retention wise?
Yeah, I think for us, one thing so besides from using Userflow and Userflow, we also do emails. And one thing we do, or two things I would say we do well, is we have emails with like tips and tricks. Like we send emails on like how you can do things smarter, and we have a cadence for that. We're planning to make it more personalized, but right now it's just a fixed cadence, basically giving like tips and tricks on how you can get more out of Userflow. So you get those emails like a drip campaign or your subscription time, right? So it's not like you get everything at once, but you get like different tips once in a while. It's something we actually got the idea from Superhuman, where the CEO is sending those kind of emails on a regular basis. So that's been great for us. And then the second thing, as I've said, done a number of video series with best practices. So I see that as a scalable way to share knowledge without having to do like hundreds of meetings. Then do a video series that basically explains how do you build your first onboarding, how do you what is onboarding best practices, how do Userflow do product-led growth, these kind of things, so people can sit down and learn on their own time. Those kind of mechanisms have been great for us too.
Yeah, interesting. I think it's a very powerful tool when you just show people how it's done. Because if you go
Yeah,
into a tool, a website, and it's kind of like it should be self-explanatory. It's a simple tool, but then
yeah,
if no one shows you like what buttons to click, basically, I don't know. It still creates friction, and then you don't want to touch it, and then it becomes just like this hanging around tool that you're never going to use. So
yeah.
yeah, I think
In
videos
in-app
are great.
onboarding, in-app onboarding guides, as you can do with Userflow, that is powerful. But also, yes, video will always be powerful as long as you make the videos short enough so they're engaging for people to watch. Then it's good.
Yeah, and on that note, I really loved like once there was a time when I thought, well, why don't I try and learn development? And that
Yeah,
went sideways, of course. But
yeah,
I really loved how Scrimba did it. I think they've got like the most amazing onboarding experience ever when you just like, it's a video, but then you can also like do stuff inside.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it's still like such a wow experience for me that yeah, do you have that?
Yeah, I mean, you can build pretty much the same with Userflow. So
Oh,
yeah, you
cool.
can embed you
Okay,
can
you
embed
got
videos, you can
amazing.
make it short form videos that auto start and so on. So yeah, you can build really cool stuff if you have the creativity, right? And again, don't invent the plate, learn from what others are doing. Um, it's a great way to do it.
Cool. All right. Okay. So something else I wanted to ask about bootstrapping, right? Because you're bootstrapped, um, how do you manage that? You're a team of three, so basically, I would assume that payroll is not your biggest spending. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what are the rules basically to bootstrapping that you have?
Payroll is our biggest expenditure, actually.
Okay.
But because we
You
don't
are
we're a
working
SaaS
hard
business.
after all.
We're a SaaS business, right? So we don't have a lot of expenses, really. We have the cloud servers. So that's the power of software, pure software. You don't have a lot of cost, really. And if you're not adding people, you're not adding, costs. To that. But payroll is still the biggest, and I think for any business it will always be the biggest expense, at least in
Okay.
SaaS. But yeah, bootstrapping our rules is just one, be hyper focused on building a great product. Two is like we should charge for our product, and we should not be scared to charge what it's worth. I think that's where a lot of like founders fail, and they need to end up raising capital is they're too afraid to charge for their products, and we've done that more or less from day one. We've charged the subscription fee for a product, and we've increased prices over the years, looking at the rest of the market where the pricing was and adjusting accordingly. So those are things you need to do. Always think about monetization. Don't see that as a monetization will come. No, it won't come unless you make it a
Yeah,
focus for your business. And then, as
absolutely.
any other bootstrap business, we of course think about our expenses, right? We don't just go out and in our case, it's like we don't hire anybody, right? So that's excluding a lot of expenses, but we also don't spend like a ton of money on random stuff. We really only spend it on the most important things. So things like sub 2, type 2 penetration testing, those are important things because with it, we can really drive a lot more sales. So those are
Yeah.
bigger expenses that we want to do, but we don't go out and like throw, like let's say conferences, right? We might not go to all conferences because the return on investment on many conferences are not there, right? And we really look at the payback period and kind of how many customers do we need if we go to this conference. And I think a lot of VC funded businesses, they might say they do that, but they don't do that. Like they will just go to those conferences to brand themselves, to be there, but they're not looking at what is the amount of customers they need from this conference and what is the payback period. But that's something as bootstrap business we're much more focused on.
Yeah. Okay. So about charging, you started charging very early, right? How
Yeah.
did you develop your pricing, and where do you stand with like the textbook um, requirements of SaaS business changing or testing their pricing every 3 months?
No, so we joined a crowded market, right? So we had some reference points to look at.
Mhm.
So I think that's always a great start. Look at your reference points. Who are your competitors? What are they charging? I think we liked at that point to put ourselves in the middle, not be the cheapest, not be the most expensive, but be something in between that, right? And then over time, we've increased those prices as we continue to look at where's the competition going, but also as our product gained more value, more features, more things. And you can always, I think, you can always raise your prices until somebody will start complaining. If you stop growing at some point, then you should maybe look at it. But uh, most founders or most businesses can increase their prices a lot more than they think. Um, then the second thing we did with pricing was to keep it simple. So
Mhm.
we only have three packages. We still only have three packages like Startup, Pro, and Enterprise. And with Enterprise, it's a paperwork package. So that's another, I think, great thing we do to reduce uh, friction is that we say if you want to do paperwork, if you don't want to do online terms, if you want to do security questionnaires, then you need to buy this much more expensive plan. But if you're okay with looking at our online policies, if you're satisfied with our SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, and you can do online terms, then you can buy a much more affordable Pro package, right? So we are kind of we're charging for friction, right? We're charging the companies who want to add friction in the procurement process, and that's worked wonders for us. It's been really a great thing. So yeah, and yes, I agree with revisiting your pricing every 3 months, and typically it would be to increase your pricing. I would say at least in the early stages,
Yeah.
that's what you should look at. Can I increase my pricing just a bit more? And you can always grandfather. I believe in grandfathering. I think some people don't believe in that, but I think it's the fair approach is to always grandfather. So existing customers can stay on their existing plan at the cost they're paying.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sure. All right. So, do you have customers that still are on that first pricing?
Yeah, I actually think we do. We do have some of those on the very early plans, but we're always introducing new features and stuff. So, and they don't get added to those plans. So, typically, they're going to start
Ah,
looking
okay.
at that. And then, yeah, the other big thing I want to mention around pricing, as we did that both at Cobalt and at Userflow, is okay. You of course need transparent pricing. Product led growth, uh, rule number one. So it needs to be on your website. But the second thing we're doing, and we did that both at Cobalt and Userflow, is usage-based pricing. So we in Userflow, it's monthly active users. So how many unique users who sign into your app in a given month. We have different levels for that. So if you're on our Pro plan, you can buy more and more of that, and we charge more depending on how many monthly active users you have. So the more success you're having with your product, the more we charge you. So it's a correlation between value and price. And then in Cobalt, it was we charged. We basically have like credits. So you would buy a certain level of credits. So the more pen tests you did with Cobalt, the more you had to pay, basically.
Yeah,
And it was always
makes
in
sense.
both models. It's been a max. So it's been like a max credit balance that you can use, or you can choose not to use it, but that's fair. And in Userflow, it's a max MAU balance, so it's not like a flexible, fluctuating kind of monthly changing cost. It's a maximum level, so typically it will only go upwards. It won't go up and down, up and down, up and down.
Okay. I was just talking yesterday with the founder of Chornkey about that. And then he also
Mm.
added that there is there is a way to reduce churn by introducing, well, first of all, like you said, the usage based
Mm.
plans, but also once they kind of on the verge of churning, then you say, well, you know what, a couple more plans for you. So
Yeah.
where do you stand on this point? Do you somehow try to reduce your churn, or you're okay
Yeah, I
when
mean, of
people?
course, we want to reduce our churn, but I think we're not going to solve it in the traditional SaaS way, which would be to build a customer success team, and then that's the classical way to reduce churn. Is like, let's have a customer success team really handhold these customers
Let's talk.
so they don't churn, right? And we definitely, I have to be honest, we've lost customers because we don't have a team like that, because they basically never got engaged enough with the product, right? So maybe a customer success team could have kind of forced that engagement more, right? The buy-in, you know.
Mm, yeah.
But we really try to solve it with the product instead. Like, how can we get them engaged in the product with the product? And that's why we're focused on that onboarding, in-app onboarding, to get them engaged with the product, get them to like it, right? So that's how we prevent churn. And when they then try to cancel, we don't offer them discounts or anything like that, but we do ask them why they want to churn. And then we can hopefully get a good answer, and hopefully we can then, you know, uh, help
Yeah.
give a good answer to why
Get
they
them back.
should not churn then, right?
Yeah.
Like a common thing would be, I'm not seeing enough traction on my onboarding flow. And given our tool is something, it's a building tool, right? But you can build bad onboarding with Userflow, right? You can take our tool and you can build really bad onboarding. And then if the reason is I'm not seeing enough engagement with my onboarding flow, and then they say that's why I want to churn with Userflow, well, then I can step in and say, or we can automatically send that to them. Well, are you following these best practices that we recommend you do, right? Like building action-driven content, making it clear and concise, and so on, right? And hopefully that can help them be convinced that, okay, maybe we could fix a couple of things to actually make it more engaging. So that's a common thing we see.
Right, right. That's also what I keep hearing. Like people who want to convert. So first of all, it's very difficult. Like if they decided to churn, then probably something has been going on for a while, and they just now decided to finally end the subscription. And the
Yeah,
second is that um, people sometimes don't know again how to use the tool, right? And they just want maybe um, a personal solution, almost like, yeah, hand holding, or
yeah,
just, I don't know, give me an assistant that would fix something that's not working. And, I'm
yeah.
prepared to pay more. But yeah, otherwise, I'm
I
not,
think I see a strong correlation between the companies who do a lot of demos and meetings. They have a tendency to be those people who also don't end up engaging 100% in a tool, right? Where you then have those other people
yeah,
who are like signing up for this tool and they're really engaging in it. And then they also become engaged with the tool because it was a more natural engagement model, basically, right? So I mean, that's they're definitely it's not that binary, right?
Yeah.
But I definitely see a correlation. I think another big thing for us is to look at the data and look at exactly as you said, what are the early signs that somebody is likely to churn? Maybe they're not logging into your platform. That's the most common thing to look at, right? If they're not logging in, there's a problem, especially with a high
Yeah.
usage tool like ours, where people should be logging in on a frequent basis.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense. So, just a couple more questions. The first one, what is so far the biggest win and the biggest failure for Userflow?
So the biggest win has been that we've been able to grow with 3 people to millions in
Yeah.
ARR. I think that's something we wake up every day and think, wow, how did we do this? That's
That's a
really
good
been amazing. The biggest loss, I think it's a tough one because we're doing really well. I think you're always seeing like smaller losses. You lose one big customer, right? And
Yeah.
and and when you're a small team of three, those customer losses feel bad, right? Because you're really close to
Yeah.
the customers and you feel, could we have done something to solve that? But that's really healthy as well because it just shows, yes, we feel with the customers if some big customers churning, what could we have done to make it better? What should we maybe change in our model to make it better? And that is a healthy but not so nice feeling to have, right? So definitely we've lost some big customers here and there, and that's of course never nice. But then we also gained a lot of fantastic other big customers, right? And I think when you're a small company like ours, you tend to forget that now you have we are closing in on 600 customers. So of course there's going to be churn, right? But that churn is
Right.
actually not, it's not
It's not as
a big
dramatic.
share out of 600 customers, right? But we still
Mhm.
feel the pain of losing customers, of course.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's just any operating business, basically.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, okay, makes sense. And the last one about well, it should have been about AI, but you already have that, so that's old news.
I'm happy to speak more
All
about
right.
AI. Yeah.
Let's talk more about AI. We're not
Yeah,
talking enough about this,
no.
but no. I want to ask you about just SaaS industry. What do you think would be a really cool headline to see in 2023 about SaaS?
I think, and this is something I'm going to saas.group in USA actually in I think it's in May or end of this
Hmm.
month, and I'm going to be speaking about how I think we should change the SaaS organization, and that
Okay.
is something. We've had the product-led growth movement for a while now. We're getting into the end user era, but our SaaS organization hasn't changed. It's still very much the old sales-led organization with customer success team, sales team, marketing team, product team, engineering team. And my argument is I think we can simplify a lot to avoid silos, to avoid conflicts, to just make it a smarter organization. So I'm hoping that we will see a trend towards that in the SaaS industry in 2023.
Okay. So Userflow changes the SaaS industry. That that's the one.
Maybe yes. I mean, Userflow. We're constantly trying to change the SaaS industry, but yeah, no. I think in general we need to do that. I think it's also a big learning from the. We had the happy days, the last in 2020 during the COVID years, the happy SaaS days where money was cheap and you were growing at like amazing rates, and now it's a much tougher time. And I think the cheap money kind of resulted in a bad org structure, right? Like where you were hiring too many people, you were making too many teams that were not needed, and now you need to optimize and make it more effective and smarter. Uh, so yeah, I think besides from AI, I hope to see some changes in
This
the
is the
SaaS
one.
organization. Yeah,
Okay. All right. That makes sense. And I just noticed, like when the first layoffs came from like Twitter and all the huge companies, and everyone
yeah,
was just so upset and so weirded out because people lost their jobs, and obviously this is a horrible thing. Uh,
yeah.
but now I see the trend, especially on LinkedIn, of people being more and more vocal about how the companies lost 30% of their workforce, but none of them died. It
No,
just, yeah, it's kind of spoke to the fact that, yeah, there was over hiring in
yeah,
the recent years. And I think people are coming to this realization that it has to change, and
yeah,
companies do need to be more um, optimized and more
mm,
effective in what they're
yeah,
doing.
yeah.
It doesn't mean, of course, that I'm sympathetic to people losing their jobs. Like I said, it's a horrible thing, but yeah, it seems like something's got to change.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a hard. These are the things that's gonna get even harder. So I don't think like the tech industry. I definitely feel with the people who were laid off, but I also know that a lot of tech workers are not gonna have a hard time finding a new job because it's such a growing market. SaaS is still we're still in the early days of SaaS. It's just gonna grow even more. So we're gonna see even more jobs in the SaaS industry. So hopefully it can even it out. But I think for an individual company, I definitely also think they should optimize more, right? But then we're just gonna see more companies with fewer employees, hopefully. And then the other thing we'll see is AI. How is that going to change the whole labor market in general, right? That's just insane. It's hard to even
Yeah,
believe. Now in San Francisco, where I normally live, we have driverless cars. What does that mean for the taxi industry? What does it mean for any person who had a job as a driver, right? So yeah, it's going to be a big paradigm change for the world. And hopefully we can find a good solution that where people can still live a good life even though they might not have a job due to these changes.
yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
see.
Oh, by driverless cars. Oh, so freaky.
Yeah, yes, it's fun though. They're now all over San Francisco, so it's really it's a lot of fun.
I live in Istanbul, and yeah, the traffic here is just absolutely crazy, and like roads, but kind of similar
Yeah,
to San Francisco, I guess.
yeah,
But just with people are never um, cross the road when the traffic light is green. They just like do the complete opposite. So I would
yeah,
just I would love to see like a driverless Tesla here. It would be
yeah,
madness.
for sure, for sure. They're
But
definitely more
yeah,
careful.
that was, yeah. But Esben, it's been great talking with you. Thank you for sharing your story. It's amazing, and like I said, I really want to go now and check what you do, and maybe see how it can help me in what I do.
Yeah,
On board guests for the podcast.
yes, for sure.
But
It's been a pleasure being here with you. So yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
thank you so much, and take care.
You too.